2002. Come on in, Art Laffer, former Reagan economic advisor. So what do you say, Art? I mean, every time I look at the data, forget about the headlines, every time I look at the data, I'm seeing important trends that, by the way, have long-term implications.
You're right, and it's good to have you here on the show, by the way. Stewart didn't leave and invite me just because he didn't have to see me, did he? Just joking, Charles. But if you look to the future, the markets tell you what will be, not what has been. And the market's telling us we're in for a good long run, and I believe that's true. I think with Trump in the presidency and the House and the Senate and the state legislatures and the governors and all of that coming together, I think we have a really great run coming before us. I couldn't be more excited about the future than I am.
You know, Art, I agree with you, too, and I think too much has been made about how quickly some of the legislative wins happen, because I think what people miss is the innate goal of businesses, and that's to grow, take market share, invent the better mousetrap, and no industry, no country does it better than America.
That's very true. In fact, if you look at it, we just do it really well. Now, not that the government doesn't try to grow and get bigger, too, and not invent the bigger mousetrap. They want to be the bigger mouse. But, you know, all these budgets, I was the first chief economist at the OMB when it was formed, Charles, and I can tell you all these budgets come in dead. They all come in with everyone complaining. The forecasts are way too rosy, blah, 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 blah. But sooner or later, all of this gets through. This is where the rubber hits the road. And these specific programs are where it happens. And I love what Mick Mulvaney says. He says, stop focusing on all the people who receive the money. Start focusing on the people who pay the money. And it's both cases. You got to look at the balance between the costs of taxes and the benefits from spending. And when the cost gets higher than the benefits, stop already.
Absolutely. I agree, Art. And by the way, they're fiduciaries of our hard-earned money, and they should respect us, not vice versa. Art, I need you to stay right there. I want to get a little bit more from you in a minute. But in the meantime, I want to point out a lot of these big retail names reported earnings last night and this morning. I want to bring in Barron's senior editor Jack Howell on this. These stocks are surging today. Right now, Sears up 18%, Guess up 17%, Best Buy up 11%, Williams-Sonoma up 10%, Philip Van Heusen up 6%. Not all of them are doing great, but they all did better than expected.
It's a low bar. I mean, there's so much pessimism out there. You know, for retail, people are aware that Amazon is taking a bite out of retail, but the perception has been that retail is going to roll over and die tomorrow. So as investors are seeing that's not quite happening. Some of these companies are doing fairly well right now. They're getting a big bump.
I went to a Sears store the other day, though, and I felt like I was in an old Russian department store. You know, it's like, it was scary. It was scarily gloomy. Like it could have been the scene of a horror movie. Yeah,
we might see the bump in their sales numbers this quarter from your visit to the store. That's a profit. But you know,
I mean, they lost $2 instead of $3. That's why the stock is up.
They got some new financing. They got some extension in their financing right now. And look, retailers are hard to kill, right? They have a lot of inventory they can sell. Oftentimes get tough. They have a lot of real estate. They have a lot of levers to pull. So they last longer than you think.
But many are dying this year. There's a lot of bankruptcies. But real quick before I let you go, some have turned the corner with respect to dealing in this new age. It feels like Best Buy may have figured it out. Maybe Williams-Sonoma may have figured it out.
You have to look for companies that do something special. Either they offer an experience in the store, or they have private label merchandise, or they sell something that can't be Amazoned away. I walk into Home Depot stores, I see people walking out with their, you know, big carts full of lumber. I mean, that's not going to get Amazoned away right away. So there's a retailer who can.
And of course, in the case of Williams-Sonoma, how could you get a $5,600 espresso machine without testing it out first? Look at that bad boy. You got to bet on the stock. All right, guys. Well, the results are in, and the Congressional Budget Office says that 23 million fewer Americans would have health insurance under the Obamacare replacement. Joining us now, Congressman Mike Kelly, a Republican from Pennsylvania, who sits on the House Tax Writing Committee. Congressman, what's your initial reaction to this CBO score?
Well, you know, first of all, Charles, we know the CBO has been off dramatically from time to time, so I don't really place a lot of faith in it, but I will say this. If your taxes go down, if the deficit goes down and premiums go down, that's a good thing. And if your pensions go up and the stock market goes up, that's a great thing. So I'll take that any day as to what is being put out there by some of our friends on the left who talk about the 23 million who are not going to be insured. Charles, they choose in a lot of these cases not to have to buy health insurance, and they're not going to be taxed anymore. So all of a sudden, if you want to use that number, be accurate about the number. A lot of it is about people who just have chosen to say, listen, you know what, I don't need it right now. And I'm not going to buy it right now. I'll buy it when I need it, not when the government tells me to buy it, especially when the government tells me what has to be in the product. That just doesn't work.
Well, what about people who do want it and can't afford it? What do you say to them? Like, because I believe most parents want their children to have health insurance, and I think it's kind of dangerous territory to suggest that while you and I want health insurance, for some reason they don't. If the Republicans are going to buy into this notion that somehow the federal government must be involved in health care insurance, then that's the sticky point there, isn't it? That's where you're going to get hammered in the press and by the other side.
Well, I got to tell you, no matter what we do, we're going to get hammered by some of the press, not all the press, to be fair about this. Listen, those folks that need help, we put in tax credits to actually help them. We've done things that make sense to help those that can't help themselves. I get that. I get the most vulnerable part. What I don't get is the idea that we can keep spending the way we're spending and have absolutely no look into the future and say, is it sustainable? The worst thing I can do in my life or you can do in your life is to promise something you can't deliver, and that we've been doing that for years. It's absolutely horrible to do that to people. What we've put forward makes sense. And the other thing, it hasn't gone through the Senate yet, so we put our piece through the House. And what's still in effect right now today is the Affordable Care Act. We're struggling with that. Listen, in Pennsylvania, Charles, our premiums were up 120%. And from a guy who does provide insurance for the people that work with me every day back at the dealership, that is an unbelievable cost of operation that I can't control anymore. I want to provide it. I want them to have it. But by the same token, it has to be affordable.
Without a doubt, the people who actually, the working poor or the working middle class really got the short end of the stick on this. And there's got to be a way, I guess, since both parties agree they're going to help to find a middle ground. But certainly this, I think, is a positive step overall in the right direction. Congressman, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Comes down to choice, Charles. Have to be able to make your own choice.
All right, great. Hey, I want to go back to Art Laffer and get his reaction. Art, the CBO score, it reduces the deficit a little bit less, in part to what Congressman Kelly talked about, the added money to help states get off of, the Medicaid relationship with the federal government and make their own decisions for their own citizens.
Yeah, I don't think the forecast done by the CBO is worth a hill of beans, to be really honest with you. They have a lot of dynamic stuff that they just don't cover and don't cover correctly. But what Congressman Kelly said is exactly correct. Remember, insurance is not health care. Insurance is an insurance plan, and it adds a lot of cost to health care in many circumstances. And while I really believe that everyone should have catastrophic health care, or at least have the resources to make sure they can take care of it, you don't want health care for everything, insurance for everything. You really don't. You want people to cost them money and they get the benefits, and they look at it like anything else, like housing, like food, like education. And you don't want to have everyone covered 100%. Otherwise, you're going to have a real mix-up. And you're going to have it really dragging the economy down. Yeah, this bill would add a lot to economic growth. Let me just say that, and it will reduce the deficit by a lot more than $119 billion over 10 years. Believe me when I tell you.
And it's also smart. I mean, some of the stuff, smart. It's a lot of smart stuff in this. Thanks, I appreciate it. Well, trouble for travelers at TSA rolling out new screening procedures at airports. Get ready to spend a lot more time on waiting lines, but wait till we tell you about all of this. And we've got a crazy story out of Portland, Oregon. Two women start a burrito food truck, and then they're forced to shut down their business after some people complained that they were appropriating the Mexican culture. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. And we just told you about the reporter who body slammed who was body slammed by a Montana congressional candidate. Well, get this. CNN's Don Lemon is blaming all of this on Donald Trump. What will our favorite media watcher, Brent Bozell, have to say about that? You're going to find out next. All right, back to politics. A Montana Republican running for Congress body slams and punches a Guardian reporter in front of a Fox News crew. And CNN anchor Don Lemon blames President Trump. Roll tape.
You feel that you have to defend everything about this particular person in office. If you actually sit there,
what does Donald Trump have anything to do with what this candidate did? Let's hold this candidate for responsible.
They're the fake people back there. They're horrible people. They're the enemy of the American people. If you think that that doesn't have anything to do with it, then you are sadly mistaken, my friend.
All right, joining us now, Brent Bozell with the Media Research Center. All right, Brent, what are your thoughts? CNN now blaming, Don Lemon at least, blaming Donald Trump for something that happened in Montana while he's in Europe.
Donald Trump is responsible for everything that is wrong in the world today. I am frankly sick and tired of the fact that it's been raining in Washington, D.C. for the last 4 days. I blame Donald Trump. And this is the mindset that you have from CNN. Remember, this is a network that has been covering him with 97% negativity since he became president. This is a network that is committed to his removal. This is a network that finds any excuse and invents excuses to come after him. It's not, I was thinking about this. It's not a Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation where eventually you blame Donald Trump. It's a 1 degree of separation. You immediately blame Donald Trump. He gets credit for nothing. He gets blamed for everything.
But here's the thing, though. It's one thing if you disagree on policy and ideology. When you start talking about a sort of responsibility for any sort of violent scene or episode, I think that's taking us down a path that can get very dangerous, though, Brent. And this is where journalists, I would suspect, have even a bigger responsibility to their audiences.
Well, but I would say where the news media are concerned, that you shouldn't participate in a discussion on policy or politics. That's your job. Your job is to report the news and nothing but that. And you've got CNN and MSNBC. Look, I think CNN is something like 37, 38 years old, and it has become a national disgrace. It does nothing but attack Donald Trump. He goes overseas. Do you think, Charles, for a moment, that they've been ignoring his trip overseas? If Donald Trump had made a mistake, instead of doing well as he's doing, if he'd made a mistake, you know full well it would be blanket coverage. But he's not making mistakes, so they're ignoring him. So what are they talking about? The Russia connection and the Russia-Trump connection. And now, on that note, Charles, I'm going to issue a challenge right now to CNN. CNN loves doing special reports, these 1-hour specials. I want to challenge them to put on the air a documentary, a 1-hour documentary, Trump-Russia connection, the evidence. As a matter of fact, they only need 5 minutes.
I was going to say, could it be a 1-hour special? It sounds like it'd probably be between commercial breaks.
It could. They can't do it. And you think about the thousands of stories that have been run on these networks and the hundreds of hours that they've spent, and yet there's nothing. There's no evidence of this. It's disgraceful.
It is. Brent Bozell, thank you very much. You're the ultimate straight shooter, and I always appreciate being able to talk with you.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, see you soon. Let's check the futures because it's going to be a great day for the market, at least in the open. You can see looking really good. We're going to be near all-time highs across the board. And your Amazon story of today, because there's always several of them. Get this, they're opening a bricks and mortar store today in Manhattan. It used to be a bookstore. They put out of business. Talk about adding insult to injury. We're going to take you there. More Varney after this. We get the latest read on economic growth tomorrow, and yesterday we had on a former official from Reagan's administration who said that we really don't need that high of growth. Roll tape.
I don't think we need 4% growth to be successful, have a successful economy in today's global economy.
Why don't we have a 4% growth rate? Why can't we have one? What's wrong with it?
Well, because the country is so weighted down with federal spending, right, that you're just sucking all that excess capacity out of the private sector into the public sector. That's the problem. So you sort of get on a vicious circle here. I got to cut taxes to feed the beast.
I want to go back to Art Laffer, former Reagan economic advisor. What's your reaction to that, Art?
Well, it's very true. I mean, we are having all the strength sucked out of the economy because of government programs, higher taxes, and all of that. But we can have 4% growth very easily, to be honest with you, Charles. If you look at from January 1st, 1983, to June 30th, 1984, that's an 18-month period, a year and a half. We had an average growth rate there of 8% annualized or 12% total growth. Those are Chinese growth rates. We really can get very rapid growth if we start doing the policies correctly. And I think 4% growth would be quite doable for a long period of time, not just for a short period of time. And growth is just set. And Trump has a very low bar, right. Charles.
Real quick,
I mean,
though,
very low bar.
But it is harder to grow, let's say, a $20 trillion economy than it is a $10 trillion economy.
Well, that's true, but also we've been pushed way further south as an economy, so we have it easier bouncing back. There was no bounce back with the Obama recovery, none. And what we have is this very low bar, which would give us quite rapid growth to get us up to normal, and then would level off, and 4% 20-year growth rates would be amazing, but 3.5% isn't that amazing. I mean, that's productivity is less than 1%. If we just get it up to 2.5%, and then we bring the employment ratio back up again, we could get very high growth rates for periods of time of a year, year and a half, too.
All right, Art, I'm with you, buddy. Heck, why not 5% at some point in the future? I appreciate it.
Let's go for it.
Let's
go for it, Charles.
All right, I got
Thank you.
the pom-poms on. I'm with you. In the meantime,